Wczoraj słyszeliśmy w Ewangelii, jeśli była czytana ta dłuższa wersja,
In yesterday's Gospel, in the longer version, we could hear that Jesus spoke to us that we should be children-like. We should be like children in order to enter God's kingdom. There is a story I would like to share. My nephew is 5 years old, and his name is Nathaniel. And my mother, his grandmother, was with him when the parents were away. And one moment, Nathaniel said to his grandmother, "I want to go to my dad." And the grandmother asked him a question. The moment she was asking it, she instantly knew it's stupid. "Don't you love your grandma?" she asked. And Nathaniel reflected for a while and said, how should I say it? I will first say the way he said. "I loved you yesterday and I will love you tomorrow, but now I want to see my dad." I loved you yesterday and I will love you tomorrow, but now I want to see my dad. This is the beginning that I would, this way I would like to share the way we should follow God's path. We are not the source of mercy. We are not the source of the good news. We need to follow the path to God. We need to go to God, to our Father. Otherwise, we're gonna pass on our weaknesses and our sinfulness. In Evangelii Gaudium, Pope Francis wants to share Evangelii Gaudium point 24. Pope says that it's one of the most important message. It's repeated by Pope Francis. It was first mentioned in Pope Benedict's documents at the beginning of being merciful. At the beginning of mercy act, there's no other thing than God, the event of God. And Pope says that thanks to this meeting, we are able to detach from ourselves and we can show mercy to others. We can follow the deeds of mercy. So there's this kind of closeness that is the beginning of mercy. My experience of intimacy with God is the beginning of sharing. If there's no personal meeting, there's no sharing afterwards. I would like to go to the 24th point of Evangelii Gaudium. The church needs to reach. The reach means fulfilling the mission of mercy. The church needs to go forth. The church needs to share the good news about the grace. And before I say about going forth, I'm going to mention the last point of the phases of evangelization mentioned in the 24th point of Evangelii Gaudium. Pope says that we should meet the people this way so that in the end we could celebrate and proclamation of the good news should be shaped this way that we could celebrate, even if the people don't accept the good news. But for us, it is enough to celebrate together. The evangelizers should celebrate together. The community of the church celebrates in the liturgy. So it's guiding the people through the experience towards others. The experience of God drives us to others. Yesterday, you heard about the mercy of God in the sacraments and in the Word of God. Every day I'm celebrating the Eucharist. I added some text in the Missal. I added some comments drawn from the encyclical letter about God's mercy, point 52. Pope says about the different dimensions of mercy. I was wondering, how can I put these inspirations into the Holy Mass that I celebrate every day? Now I'm going to refer to the Caravaggio painting, where God reaches his hand and he calls the tax collector Matthew from the darkness. He speaks the word and he says, "Come, follow me." This image says that as we look at the image, we see Peter in the first place. God in the Sistine Chapel forms Adam. The same way here Jesus reaches his hand towards the tax collector, Matthew.
Na rękę Jezusa i sam układa swoją rękę w podobny sposób.
Same way Peter reaches his hand in this image. The merciful Jesus comes as mercy incarnate. And we are meeting Jesus during the Holy Mass, experiencing his mercy and then sharing his mercy later on. Many people come to everyday Mass and experience this. So, I've drawn those 5 dimensions of God's mercy. Hamal is the first dimension of mercy in the encyclical letter. It means the one who lost in the battle. The one who lost in the battle for love. I'm poor. In my poor garments. And I am in need of the mercy of Jesus. It's like during the feast that the people were invited to, some didn't answer to the call, and there were others invited straight from the street, and one person was not dressed properly. And when he was asked, "Why are you dressed this way? Why are you dressed this way? It's not proper dress for this feast." He didn't say anything. He didn't answer anything. And he was thrown out of this place. Why? Because there was no answer. The answer should be, "Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, have mercy on me." This is the answer I should have. I'm not the source of mercy. And then I follow my path into the everyday life. And I look at the people, and I look down, and I say, "How do you look today? What's the way you're dressed?" When I ask these questions, I also show pity. The same as during that feast, these people have a chance to ask for God. Saint Faustina inspires us to see the people who lost in the battle for love. Everybody loses. Yesterday, today. And we need to be clothed with the garments. The merciful words we can hear from Jesus in the
To jest ten wymiar rachamim.
Rahamim is the mercy of
Miłosierną miłością, która
coming out of the womb of God. So whatever we need, the mercy is reaching out. The creativity in mercy, the imagination that we can develop. When I go to Holy Mass, I wonder, what's the way you want to be loved by me today? How do you want to be treated today? What kind of mercy do you need today? What kind of word do you need? What kind of gesture? What kind of look? This is about to be changed. It needs to be varied. It's like our mother who adjusts her mercy to the child who is sick, who is younger or older. Doesn't matter the age. Our everyday life should celebrate the mercy in creativity, just as the liturgy of the word. The word comes to us the way we need it. I remember one married couple. They had an argument and the silent days were quite long. I told them, ask God during the Holy Mass to tell you what you should tell to each other. He came back after Mass and he said, I heard Psalm 40. You didn't want any gift, but he opened my ears. His ears should be merciful. He should listen to his wife, and he should love his wife with his ears. That was the message. If you have ears, you should love with your ears. She needs to be heard. Doesn't matter whether she repeats her message, the same message she used to say every day, every year of the marriage. Still, continue listening to her. That was his call. Ephesians 5:33 was the message she heard during the Mass. Dear husbands, love your wives. And there's the second part. The wives should respect the husbands. She didn't know what it means. And she asked her husband, when do you not feel respected, or do you feel respected? And instantly, as men can confirm, I feel respected when you don't criticize me, when the children are near and the strangers are near. And then she understood that she should have merciful mouth, that she should not comment, make remarks about him, compare him to some other man. This is the mercy in daily life. When we wonder how you are to be treated by me today. The third moment that we discover during the Holy Mass, in the Eucharist, when God comes to us in a faithful way, when we are not faithful. This is the love of God that is faithful. It's very difficult to be faithful towards someone who is unfaithful, who loves this way that you cannot live with this person. It's important that we discover the forgiving love of Jesus so that we could act the way he acted towards us. And later, after the Holy Mass, I keep wondering, how should I behave towards the unfaithful ones? Towards those who speak beautiful words, who make beautiful gestures, and in my heart I know that this person is unfaithful. So I have this knowledge. And Jesus says, my friend, he doesn't withdraw his love, does not withdraw the love. This is extremely important and extremely difficult. But if we don't celebrate love, merciful love, If we don't meet Jesus, we won't be able to love this way. We won't be as merciful in order to lift others up. There is a Chanakol community in Tarnów, a community of boys who are drug addicts, alcohol addicts and different addicts. Sister Manuela, Sister Elvira founded this community in many countries, beginning from Italy. And the message there is that if somebody is unfaithful, doesn't know how to be faithful, the answer is we need to wait. Sometimes we need to wait for the faithfulness to come, just as the merciful Father. We don't need to run after someone, search for someone, but wait for that person, for his suffering to bring him back to us. When I was the parish priest, I had some situations where I encountered the young people with serious problems, and I had to direct them to the community. The worst thing was with the parents. It was the hardest work with the parents because they needed to be unmerciful. They needed to withdraw their gestures of mercy in order to wait for the young person to decide that they need help. Sometimes you need to tell the truth. You are unfaithful, and I suffer because you are unfaithful. And some others are not communicative. You cannot really talk to them, so you just need to wait for them. The fourth moment is the Hus love, the compassionate love, the tender love. And here I can imagine Holy Communion, when we approach Jesus and we are united with him and we don't need to speak anything. And there comes a moment when you meet the people where you should keep silent. I remember there was a girl brought by a student. This girl claimed that she's been in the Satanist sect, and I used to minister as an exorcist. So for 3 years she was coming to the exorcism and she never spoke a word. It was very strange. It was like an adoration. I tried to say something, but she never answered. Sometimes she bowed her head, but she didn't say anything. I had the temptation to leave her, stop working with her, but after 4 years she started to speak. When she gained the trust, when she saw the care and she realized that I really wanted to help her. And then I got to know that her family was abusing her sexually. That is why the step to join the Satanist sect. She was terribly wounded. But after 4 years she spoke. But during this time I couldn't decide whether I should leave her or wait for her. So you're helpless and you're still there because Jesus teaches us to be there, like at the adoration. There's nothing you can do. You can just be. The fifth thought, the fifth dimension, Hanan, it's a calling. Go and go forth. We are invited to be merciful as our Father is merciful in the everyday life. There's this evangelization of Woodstock concert, Woodstock Festival. Is assisted by Jesus Festival, where people evangelize those who participate in the Woodstock Festival. And what was the most powerful thing to evangelize these people was the cuddle. One girl came to this festival and she didn't really feel like joining the group of those friends she came with. She could see other young people, and she saw the T-shirts with message, "You are precious to my eyes, God." God was the author of these thoughts printed on the T-shirts, and she kept reading it and thinking. And one moment she stood up and she approached one boy who was wearing such T-shirt, and she asked, "What do these words mean?" And he didn't know what to do because he was carrying on a conversation with some people at that moment, and she didn't want to reject her. So he didn't know what to say, but he just cuddled her. The answer was a hug. "This is the meaning," he said. And then he said, "Sorry, I cannot continue with you because I'm talking to someone." And this girl said that when she met a priest later on, she said the story that this hug was a moment of purification, of beginning of purification in her heart. It was the first boy who cuddled her this way that she felt he didn't expect anything from her, that this hug began her process of cleansing. So sometimes we need our hands to be at work in order to reach out to those who need merciful love. I would like to say that, just as that Pope said in the document Misericordia et Misera, "Go and console my people." This is what the Lord awaits from us, to console others with the consolation we receive from God. Because sometimes we try to console others without mercy. And this is where I have a thought of Saint Bonaventura, of the 3 dimensions of consolations. The consolation should be true. True. And Saint Bonaventura says that the consolation should console not only the senses but also the soul. At the same time, the world consoles the senses only and leaves the soul on the side. So the true consolation reaches the core of the problem. And we can notice that when we are sad, we try to console our senses. We tend to ease the tension. Saint Bonaventura says that that sometimes we tend to console the horse, not the rider. And the rider doesn't profit out of this consolation. So we fall into drugs and into different addictions, but our soul is hungry. The consolation should reach the soul first, because this is the soul that is sad. So the consolation should come from God and not to be superficial. So we're trying to deceive ourselves with this too superficial consolation of the world. The second dimension of the consolation is the perfect consolation. Perfect in this manner, not as the way the world should console, consoling one wound and adding 2 other wounds. Or reaching one hole and leaving 2 others. There was a woman left by her husband with 2 children, a prayerful woman, but she was alone in this situation, in this pity, and she met a friend from work who was consoling her, supporting her. For a long time it was a very good thing, but at the end it turned out a sexual relationship and she got pregnant with him. So this consolation was one thing, and the wound he made became another, was another thing. So Saint Peter says that it's better to suffer doing good than doing wrong. So if you suffer, do not console yourself with sin. Sin will not be another consolation, it will be tearing. The quality of consolation should be adjusted to the greater the sadness, the greater the consolation should be given. And the world, when we are joyful, the world claps with us. And when we are sad, the world accuses us and leaves us alone. And God consoles us adequately, perfectly. The greater the sadness, the greater the consolation. And sometimes the kind of consolation God gives is the woe, woe to me. Jesus says to those who have deceitful hearts, you whitened stones, to mention that they are not true in their relationship with God. So when we make a remark about someone who is in the power of evil, under the power of evil, we will only worsen his situation. We need to tell him that he's doing wrong. Like Jesus said to these people, you're the whitewashed tombs.
So I would like to get to the 24th point, where very directly the Pope says, based on the 24th chapter in the Gospel, when the apostles are leaving Jerusalem and going to Emmaus. So this shows what mercy should look like in our everyday lives. So first of all, we need to take the initiative. The Lord took the initiative. He has loved us, and this is why He knows how to move forward, how to reach the crossroads, and how to invite the excluded. And so to take the initiative, that is the task of the church, not to wait, but to take the initiative. We have a migration crisis at the moment on the borders, and we can wait what the situation is going, how the situation is going to evolve. But we cannot wait for something to happen and just see how it evolves. We need to do something with it. We need to take the initiative. I recall how a few years ago I was introduced into an initiative, into a very excluded circle, and I did not realize that someone needs to enter there. That very day I received an email from the United States from a nun who works in Chicago, and she said that she would like to run a retreat, which is a healing after abortion, and she came from the area where I was the priest. That very day I had a meeting, a retreat, a conference with nuns from our diocese, and there was another sister who came up to me who just come back from Nagadan, from Russia, and she says, would you please help me to organize a retreat which was healing after abortion, because this is what I have been running in Ramadan in Russia for a few years. So the very first day I received signals from two different corners of the world, from Russia and from the States, that this initiative needs to be undertaken. And so we have had a series of workshops, and Rachel, now another priest, has taken over that part. Another 10 people have just finished that retreat. Another 10 people have gone through the process. But this is where we talk about abortion as being a sin, being something bad. This is like renting a hitman and paying for that. this is wrong, but what remains is silence, is misery, exclusion, especially that women who performed an abortion exclude themselves. There was a woman who was 19 years old, a girl, and a woman at the age of 90. I have listened to 120 women, and this is but a margin of what needs to be embraced. But the church says, let us take the initiative. There are places that need divine mercy, because the Pope speaks about the cry that needs to be heard, and then you need to also get involved. And this is the second stage. Yes, this is also a dilemma: get involved or not get involved. And then there was another initiative that needs to be taken care of. But after the first session, after the first retreat, I knew that this requires attention. This requires my engagement, otherwise I will commit a sin. Jesus washed the feet of his apostles. He kneels in front of others to serve them. And the retreat,
Z takim poczuciem, że zaraz dostaną.
the Rachel's Vineyard, this is how it starts, how the retreat starts, because those women come, that they are going to be excused, people are going to tell them, what have you done? And we start with the meditation of the part of the gospel that talks about adultery and the woman who committed adultery. And so all of a sudden the woman discovers that the mercy of Jesus is lower, even below the sin. And the woman discovers that during the retreat is all about, first of all, about her. So this is about getting involved through works and gestures into everyday life of others, because she keeps on accusing herself. She has got bad conscience, and sometimes when you don't hear your conscience, when you don't hear something, sometimes you need a gesture, a very simple gesture. For example, kneel down. And then we read, we need to accompany. It is not enough to have one-off gestures. You need to accompany. And this is what I have experienced a lot as an exorcist. I have had people whom I accompanied for 10 years with a prayer, with exorcism, because she was so deeply in Satanism that many years were needed to take her out of it. Someone else is there for 3 years, someone else for 1 year. And that's a beautiful image that I would like to mention here. For 1 year, we kept praying. Every 2 weeks, the parents came to a prayer. And one day I got a text message from her. She was a high school student. She says, I'm free. Okay, so we need to check it. So she came again and again, and she was freed. But where did that happen? During her personal prayer in front of the image of merciful Jesus. So there was the peregrination of a copy of that painting, and together with her parents she went to the evening prayer. And of course they had to hold her because the reactions are extremely strong, but she came to that meeting with the intention that Jesus helps her. So I sat down and I felt that I'm free. There was this deep feeling that I'm free. This is what she wrote to me, and we could confirm it afterwards. Which doesn't mean that the prayers and exorcism were not needed. But it happens very often that it is not during the exorcism that someone is freed. It's under other circumstances, but the prayer is necessary. But it was Jesus who told her, that's the end, that's done, you're free. So to accompany someone is necessary, because it's not a one-off action, one-off event. And that is important, but it costs. it comes at a cost. So there was a woman who was freed who suggested that maybe we should publish a book, maybe, and I asked her, what about? Well, all of the text messages that we have exchanged over the years, maybe someone will use it. So, and she's got it. She's got all of those text messages, this spiritual struggle, this spiritual combat. I erased those text messages, but she kept all of them, and she's got the full record. And this is the accusation. What is happening, the light at the end of the tunnel, the light in a given situation, is maybe we should publish it because someone may find it useful, it may help someone. So to accompany, because sometimes you have to wait for a long time, as the Pope says, but if we are faithful, it begins to bear fruit. It brings fruit. We need to pay attention to fruit because merciful love needs to bear fruit. But of course, there are also weeds that sprout among the grain. So not everything is ideal. With one person who spent a few years in the chapel, there were a few people who held her tight so that she can survive the Eucharist. There comes a moment when she starts coming by herself and take communion, even though she's not free. The weed is still there. There are still a lot of issues. She needs to adapt to the society. She's never worked. Now she needs to go through therapy. She had been beaten up and molested during at night. There is still weed, but she comes to the Eucharist and also she takes communion. She was afraid that she would she would come, and there were some priests who were afraid to come and serve communion that she would bite. And then they were also afraid how she's going to take communion, whether she's not going to bite them. But it was a breakthrough that she is able to come by herself. We need to be happy that there is fruit, even though there is weed as well, so it's not all clean. So it is necessary, says the Pope, that we need to wait for the fruit. It doesn't happen right away. I remember when we were building a center, we established a foundation so that it can serve new evangelization. We received a building from our bishop, and so we had to renovate it. It took about 2 years because we were financing it ourselves, and we had a deal, an agreement with the prison in Tarnów that the convicts came. And so, those young men were trusted. They received a lot of trust, but they started to steal. And it was also an issue, yeah? Should I report it or not? If I report it, then there will be an additional punishment. But then we had a talk, and after a month, another young man stole something, so we talked again. But this is about bearing fruit, being faithful, being true is very important. And what comes next is celebration. And so it is true that some people are not going to get involved in the life of the church, but there are some that we worked with on different works. There was one girl who came from LGBT. She was really aggressive, pretty aggressive with her behavior, but we did hire her company because she runs a company that is really good with social media. So she called me sir. Okay. And then after a few months with many others, I would come. I was a priest, I wasn't a bishop yet. And after a month, she would speak to me as you would to a priest, father. And it doesn't mean anything, but it shows that something changed in her. There was a relationship that was started. She doesn't come to church, but we can celebrate together. So we respect one another. We do not criticize one another, even though we discuss very serious matters. So this is about conveying the message, give someone space, but also support that person, accompany that person, but also celebrate. It doesn't mean that we will always be joined by these people. We need to give them freedom, but accompany them. I do have a few other remarks that I would like to share with you, but probably you will not bear it at the moment because the time is up. So church shows us how to implement mercy, and that is point 24 in Evangelii Gaudium. So we do it in the church, but we need to start with ourselves. If I don't go myself, then it's going to be an issue. And I would like to close with an image from the Polish Woodstock. And they were attacking the church, and they were saying, maybe you don't understand something, etc. And so two smaller boys come here, and I was still talking to the other ones, and those two guys stood next to me, and he said, no, he doesn't understand. One of them said, he doesn't get it, he doesn't understand anything. And I was thinking to myself, no, you don't understand, you guys don't understand. And I went for adoration, and I heard from Jesus, it is you who don't understand, because you were thinking about your anxiety, you were defending yourself, but you are supposed to bring the news about me. You are supposed to also bring the message of mercy and speak of me. Thank you very much.